The world of entertainment has been shaken by devastating news that feels both surreal and deeply unfair. Game of Thrones actor Michael Patrick has died at just 35 years old, leaving behind a legacy that is far bigger than many people realize, and a story that is as inspiring as it is heartbreaking. Michael Patrick passed away on April 8, 2026, in Northern Ireland after a long and courageous battle with Motor Neurone Disease, a rare and incurable condition that slowly takes away a person's ability to move, speak, and eventually breathe. His death didn't come as a sudden shock to those closest to him, but that doesn't make it any less painful. In fact, it makes it even more emotional because for years, the people who loved him watched him fight day after day against something he knew he couldn't defeat. His wife, Naomi Sheehan, confirmed the heartbreaking news, sharing that Michael spent his final days in hospice care, surrounded by the people who meant the most to him. She described his passing as peaceful, but also admitted that words couldn't truly capture the heartbreak the family is now experiencing. And if you've seen the tributes pouring in online, you already know this loss is being felt far beyond just his family. Because Michael Patrick wasn't just another actor. He wasn't just another name attached to a massive show like Game of Thrones. He was a storyteller, a performer, a writer, and above all, a fighter. For many viewers, his appearance in Game of Thrones may have been brief, but being part of one of the biggest television series in history is something very few actors ever achieve. He appeared as a wildling rioter in the globally successful HBO series, and while it may not have been a leading role, it placed him in a cultural phenomenon that shaped television for an entire generation. But here's the thing that makes his story so compelling. Game of Thrones was just a small part of who he was. Michael Patrick's career stretched far beyond that single credit. He was deeply involved in television, theater, and writing, building a reputation as someone who didn't just act, he transformed. He appeared in projects like Blue Lights, This Town, and Krypton, proving his range across different genres and styles. Every role he took on showed a different side of his talent, and those who worked with him often spoke about his dedication, his preparation, and his ability to completely immerse himself in a character. But if you really want to understand Michael Patrick, you have to look at his work on stage. Theater wasn't just something he did, it was where he truly came alive. He performed in powerful productions like Othello, Measure for Measure, and The Taming of the Shrew, bringing classic characters to life with intensity and authenticity. His performances were known for being emotionally raw and deeply engaging, the kind that leaves audiences thinking long after the curtain falls. And then came the moment that changed everything. In February 2023, Michael Patrick was diagnosed with motor neurone disease. For most people, that diagnosis would feel like the end. It's a condition that doesn't just threaten your life, it slowly takes away everything that makes you who you are, your movement, your independence, your voice. And yet, Michael refused to let it define him. Instead of stepping away from his career, he leaned into it even harder. He continued to perform. He continued to write. He continued to create. Even as his body began to fail him, his spirit didn't. In 2024, after his diagnosis, he took on one of the most challenging roles any actor can attempt, Richard III. Performing Shakespeare is never easy, but doing it while battling a degenerative disease, that's something else entirely. And he didn't just perform, he delivered a performance so powerful that it earned him critical acclaim and recognition at major theater awards. Think about that for a second. A man who knew his time was limited, who knew his physical abilities were slowly fading, chose to step onto the stage and give everything he had, knowing that each performance might be harder than the last. That's not just talent, that's courage. And it didn't stop there. Michael Patrick began using his personal battle as a source of inspiration for his creative work. He co-wrote projects that reflected his experience living with motor neurone disease, turning pain into storytelling and storytelling into something meaningful for others. He wasn't just sharing his story, he was giving a voice to countless people facing the same condition. He became an advocate. He raised awareness about MND. He showed people what resilience looks like, and in doing so, he earned not just admiration, but deep respect.
In 2025, he was honored with the Overcoming Adversity Award at the Spirit of Northern Ireland Awards, recognizing not just his work as an artist, but his strength as a human being. It was a moment that symbolized everything he stood for: perseverance, courage, and the refusal to give up, even when the odds are impossible. But behind all of this recognition, all of these achievements, was a very real and very difficult reality. Motor neuron disease is relentless. It doesn't pause, it doesn't slow down, it doesn't offer second chances. Over time, it takes away the ability to walk, to use your hands, to speak clearly, and eventually to breathe. For someone whose entire life revolves around expression, acting, speaking, performing, it's one of the cruelest things imaginable. And yet, even as the disease progressed, Michael Patrick continued to connect with people. Through interviews, through social media, through his work, he shared his journey in a way that was honest, sometimes heartbreaking, but always inspiring. He didn't pretend everything was okay, but he also didn't give in to despair. And that's why his story resonates so deeply right now. Because when news of his passing broke, it wasn't just about losing an actor, it was about losing someone who showed the world what it means to keep going, even when everything is stacked against you. Social media has been flooded with tributes from fans, fellow actors, and industry professionals. People are sharing memories, clips of his performances, and messages about how he inspired them. Some are talking about his work, others are talking about his personality, his humor, his warmth, his energy. His wife described him as someone full of life, someone who brought joy to the people around him, someone who refused to let darkness take over. And if you look at the way people are reacting, it's clear that wasn't just a personal opinion. It's something everyone who knew him felt. What makes this even more emotional is his age, 35. That's it. In an industry where many actors are just beginning to hit their stride, Michael Patrick was already proving himself as a powerful performer. He had momentum, he had recognition, he had a voice, and yet his life was cut short far too soon. But maybe the most important thing to remember here is this: his story didn't end with his illness. Yes, motor neuron disease was a part of his life, but it doesn't define him. What defines him is what he did after the diagnosis. He created, he performed, he inspired, he fought. And in doing so, he left behind something that will last far longer than any single role or performance. He leaves behind his wife Naomi, his family, his friends, and a community of people who were touched by his journey. And while the pain of his loss is undeniable, so is the impact of his life. Because not everyone gets to choose how their story ends, but Michael Patrick chose how he lived every moment leading up to it. And that's something worth remembering. So as the world says goodbye to a talented actor and an incredible human being, one thing is clear: his legacy isn't just in the roles he played, but in the strength he showed, the stories he told, and the lives he changed along the way. Make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more celebrity updates just like this.